There's some serious flaws in following a lot of the longevity research if your goal is muscle preservation, even building muscle, and even to a certain degree, fat loss. Longevity and performance don't always go hand in hand. Longevity and body composition don't always go hand in hand. My job has always been to sort of bridge that gap a little bit. I feel like we can have both as long as we understand. So I have some ways for you to leverage what we know from the longevity research with what we know from the sort of body composition and performance side of things. So what I want to address today is something called a senescent cell, which in the world of longevity gets overhyped as this terrible, like, zombie cell is literally what they call it. And it's the most frustrating thing because the body does not create these cells to hurt us. They create them to help us, but we need to understand how to control them, okay? They're not zombies, they're more like clones, and I'll explain how this works. After today's video, special link down below for a free variety pack of LMNT electrolytes. You get a free sample pack with all the different flavors of 1,000 milligrams sodium, 200 milligrams potassium, 60 milligrams magnesium in amazing flavors: citrus salt, lemon habanero, mango chili, chocolate salt, unflavored. Okay, you get that free variety pack with any purchase using my special link down below. So that's drinklmnt.com/Thomas. So if you're fasting, if you're low carb, if you're a regular person, if you sweat a lot, these are for you, okay? This is the bee's knees when it comes down to electrolytes, predominantly because of the higher amount of sodium, which is usually what we excrete first. Highly recommend it. Great if you just want something to sip on, but you don't want to eat. You want to kind of kill your cravings. That's how I use it. Sipping on electrolytes just neutralizes my cravings, and makes it easy for me to stay in the shape that I'm in. So that link is down below underneath this video. Let's say, for example, you are really busy and you wish that you could clone yourself. But if you cloned yourself, that would mean that that clone might start running amok with your entire life, right? Like, he may come home and meet your wife, right? Like something like that. He may go and go to the store and start doing weird things and make people think that that's you. It could really cause a problem. But if you could take that clone and you could say, hey, clone, I'm programming you to do this one job. Then you could send that clone to work for you. You could send that clone to the gym. Okay, that wouldn't really work. But anyway, you get what I'm saying here. That's what senescent cells do. So when people say they're zombie cells, it's a huge problem because they're not zombie cells. Zombies are useless. Let me explain how this can become a problem for your muscle building first, and then we'll talk about how that interplays with fat loss. So there was a study that was published in FASEB journal. It's a pretty esteemed journal. Okay, and they found that senescent cells actually aid in fiber repair, in the regenerative process of muscle. So when we break down muscle, what happens is the body says, hey, let me create a proxy of this cell to go and start building muscle or start repairing so that I can focus on what I need to focus on. I'm busy with this task, so make a clone, go do my work for me. That's the idea. They also play a tremendous role in satellite cells. Satellite cells, when you tear a muscle, like in the gym, or not tear it, but break it down, you have these satellite cells. And they kind of hover over the muscle. I guess that's a simple way to put it, the regular cell. Okay, and then what happens is they fuse to the cell and they cause growth. So these satellite cells hover like satellites and then fuse and make the muscle grow. There are less satellite cells if there are no senescent cells. So if you don't have senescence, then that's a problem, right? So all this talk out there in the longevity world about blocking senescent cells because they're zombie cells, I get it. When you're older, this is super, super important. Here's another study. This study was published in the journal Physiology, and it found that when you are older, blocking senescent cells can actually help you build muscle and help prevent sarcopenia, the age-related sort of muscle wasting. Huge. So if you take that literature, you're like, great, this is great for me to take all the time. However, in that same study, they find that younger people, it actually blocks repair. Now, there's other studies that demonstrate that senescent cells promote wound healing. So senescent cells are required for repair. What happens is as we get older, We have so many more senescent cells that form because what happens is they're formed a lot of times when there's DNA damage or just mutations to cells. So the body creates proxies of those cells that cannot procreate, that cannot replicate, in an effort to save you from mutated cells growing and creating mutated things. It's actually helping you a ton. But eventually, you get so many senescent cells that it does become an encumbrance to things. So what happens if you focus so much on like senolytics and trying to suppress cell senescence? Well, you absolutely will hinder your healing. You will negatively impact things. So when do you start focusing on it? Probably in your 40s, maybe your late 30s. Now, I'm talking about, using these compounds that people talk about, but let's talk about like a bigger longevity thing too. When I had Peter Attia on my channel, one of the things he said he changed his mind on specifically was the use of metformin for longevity. You see, metformin for a long time, it's something that was increasing AMPK, adenosine monophosphate, right? This is super, super important. Now, if you phosphorylate AMPK, it's essentially like you're in a caloric deficit. You're activating all kinds of longevity avenues and things like that. Okay, but what happens is when you activate AMPK, you also suppress mTOR. And mTOR is pro-growth and repair. But in the same breath, mTOR is also pro-tumor growth and also pro-bad growth. So if we try to block growth, we also block recovery and repair. But if we try to provoke it, we potentially grow bad things. So where's the balance? Well, with senolytics, I don't think those should be added in until you're older. But as far as longevity is concerned, very stark contrasts between periods of deprivation and periods where you're focusing on longevity, and then periods where you're focused on performance. If you try to focus on performance and longevity at the same time, it can be difficult. It can be done, and candidly, it's the safest way to do it if you start from the get-go, because it can prevent injury and you can do things in a sustainable fashion. But personally, I like to chunk my time. I chunk my workouts into high performance bouts, and then I take longer chunks where I focus on more repair and recovery. I have much more deload weeks with my training than I do hard weeks. And it works that way. And if you look at some of the competitive athletes these days, that's how they train. What does it have to do with longevity? Because longevity is not just how long you live, it's how long you play the game. Whether that game is professional basketball or whether that game is jumping into a CrossFit box twice a week for just craps and giggles, right? Or maybe it's just being able to play with your kids. Being in the game is really important for longevity, your vitality. So when we look at this, what's the best way to structure it? Mitochondrial health perspective, longevity there, the best thing that you can do is focus if you're younger, because I know people watching this video are going to be all ages. 20s, 30s, focus on getting the muscle. Focus on the muscle and building the cardiac strength. So focus on your workouts as much as you possibly can. Focus on your nutrition. Do what you can fundamentally with your nutrition and your workouts without all the gobbledygook. The supplements are not going to save your day when you're young. Okay, they're not going to help save your world. What's going to save your world is doing the hard work now and paving the road for yourself. Then when you get into your 40s, that's when you can start playing with the senolytics. That's when you start playing with the compounds that have longevity aspects in terms of the research. The compounds that have the true longevity research behind them are the things we already know. Micronutrient-rich foods, protein, exercise, calorie restriction here and there. Those things are all things you can do when you're young. But if you want to start really focusing and getting granular, the Dave Aspreys of the world, the Brian Johnsons of the world, I wouldn't recommend messing around with that stuff until you're at least in your 40s. That way you get the most and you don't ever blunt growth. Growth and repair is so important. Do not forget it. I'll see you tomorrow.